Tonight's top five video was another request by OAW Faithful and OAW patron Khalil Young. Salute to you, sir. And if you have a request for a top five list you would like to see conducted right here on OAW Entertainment, become a patron at patreon.com/OAW and select the top five tier. For just 15 bucks, not only do you get your request for a top five video, you also get access to all Patreon exclusive content, the OAW Vault, and you get an invite to join in live right here on camera for the live monthly Q&A that is held right here on not just the YouTube channel, not just the Facebook page, but it's streaming on Twitch now too, baby. That's right. The monthly Q&A, you get an invite to join in on that. So once again, become a patron, patreon.com/OAW, select that top five list. And with that being said, this is my list of my top five favorite Marvel Comics characters. So let's get it started.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
Greetings to everyone watching live and everyone watching after the fact. Shout out to the faithful and salute to the patrons. This is Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, here to bring you all another top five video. Once again, want to do another huge shout out to my man, OAW faithful and patron Khalil Young, for another top five request. Khalil's been holding it down for the top five, guys. He's been holding it down. And yeah, so he hits me up for a request for me to, discuss some of my favorite Marvel Comics characters. Now, what's funny about this list is I get the feeling, doesn't this always seem to be the case with top five, right? It's like because of previous videos I've done or because of previous conversations I've had on camera, it's like you guys can probably figure out what this list is going to entail, right? I'm pretty sure you guys are going to be able to figure out if you can't figure out all of my five, you're going to at least be able to figure out some of my five, that whole thing. But it'll be kind of interesting to see exactly where these characters rank and whatnot. All right, so how did I come up with this list? Because I got to break it down for you guys every top five, right? All right, so this one was a little bit different. I had some things I had to consider with compiling like top five favorites, right? So I'm getting ready to make the list, right? And as soon as all right, top five favorite Marvel characters, right? Immediately, I figured out the top four. And then the fifth was sort of like a well, duh moment, right? Like I had a legit well, duh moment. Because I just, brain fart. So, but there was some things I had to take in consideration. One of the things I took in consideration was, well, first off, just personal preference, right? Because it's a favorites list. So what characters do I just like? Okay, fine. Now I got all the characters I like. Then it was, okay, now out of all these characters, you got to narrow it down to five. All right, how do we narrow it down to five? Okay, well, who do I have like a personal affinity to, right? Like what characters do I like more than others just based upon like, who that character is. So I'm talking about like their secret identity and whatnot, right? What the character represents, things like some of my favorite stories, things like, that character's villains and their rogues gallery, all that type of stuff, right? All right, so then I start narrowing down the list from there. But then it was still more than five characters, right? So I'm like, all right. So then I started taking consideration, how much do I know about that character, right? Like just my own personal knowledge of that character that I can just spit out in conversation or on camera, just on a whim, right? Because this isn't scripted, of course. We're going off the cuff, right? So that, okay, length of time with said character. How long has it been since I've been introduced to that character? How much time have I had to spend with that character? All those types of things went into compiling, narrowing it down. I finally got it down to five, guys, and I think we're good. And I think we good. All right. So right before I jump into the list, I just want to let everybody know, because I see people filing in right now into the chat. What's happening, everybody in the chat? If you got this one, I can't make a long video because I actually got it. I'm on a timetable, so I can't make this one a long video. So if you guys want to make sure that your question or your comment gets read right here live on camera before the end of tonight's broadcast, you can always drop a super chat. And if you want to support the channel via Cash App and PayPal, you can do that as well. Links are in the description box below. I see some people. Oh, and feel free throughout the course of the video, drop your own top five favorite lists. I see my man Adam already got his. And all right, I'm not gonna comment on Adam's list because I don't want to give away any from my list, right? So I'm not gonna comment on his list. Not yet. All right, guys. So coming up on 5 minutes, let's go ahead. Let's kick this thing off. So coming in at number 5, and This was the choice that was the well duh choice, right? Because like I said, my top four I thought of immediately. This one I actually had to stop and think about, and then I'm like, but what, dude? What are you talking about? Of course. All right. So kicking things off, number five on my top five favorite Marvel characters is none other than the man without fear himself. Yeah, Matt Murdock, aka the Daredevil, or aka the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. Right. So how come this was a dud moment for me, right? Like an of course moment. So here's the thing about that. Daredevil has always been one of my favorite Marvel characters since I was first introduced to him, right? Just off of initial conceit and concept alone, right? The notion that, oh, he loses his vision as a kid, but in return, because of the accident and the chemicals that caused his vision loss, he develops these supernatural senses and whatnot, and that allows him to pretty much be able to navigate the world. And then Matt could have gone ahead and been like, oh well, I can use like my hearing, and I can use like my sense of smell, and things like that, just to operate, and I'll be totally fine. But no, he goes to the nth degree with it, right? Because now he becomes a master combatant, right? Like a master martial artist. He becomes a gymnast. Daredevil was doing parkour long before parkour was even a thing, right? And then of course he becomes a crime fighter. But like I said, conceit alone, the notion of the loss of one sense pretty much awakens, amplifies, and to a superhuman level, all the other senses he has, right? And then the other thing about it too is his secret identity, Matt Murdock. He is a lawyer by day, crime fighter by night. So it's like even outside the costume, he is constantly pursuing justice for the weak and downtrodden. He does both in and out of the costume. That's probably the thing about him. Because so many other characters, whether they're, I mean, granted, like let's use Superman for an example, right? Like, yeah, Clark Kent does do, journalism. He does do more journalism, so much investigative reporting, right? More journalism, but he does do it for, good for the good of his fellow man. He does try and seek justice out through his reporting, get down to the truth of what's going on, right? Okay, but it's different. It's different when you're actually in the courthouse. You're defending these people, and you're trying to you're either defending people or you're trying to persecute people who have committed crimes against others. Prosecute people who have committed crimes against others. Like for me, that was such a cool thing. That was such a cool thing. And then on another level with Daredevil, the whole the fact that he's Catholic, the whole fact that Catholicism is a major theme, and throughout all of his books, throughout his major stories, like the really big stories, and how that whole belief system influences him as a character, meaning Matt Murdock, but then him as a vigilante slash crime fighter, meaning Daredevil, like how all of that plays in and ties into his character. I always dug Daredevil. And like I said, another qualifier to get on the list is how long I've been with the character. I was first introduced to Daredevil in the 90s Spider-Man animated series episodes, right? And I always thought he was cool then. But then, of course, when the 2003 film, the Ben Affleck film came out, like I was just sort of like I just considered myself a Daredevil fan because I am one of the few people that actually do like that '03 Ben Affleck Daredevil film. I will defend it because I don't think it is nearly as good as most people make it out to be. Is it great? No, it's not. Does it need a lot of work? Well, of course it does. But it is still, I mean, it is fine for what it is. It's fine for what it is. But then of course, fast forward to 2015 when the Netflix series came out, and I mean the Netflix series is just gold. That series gave me almost everything I wanted from a Daredevil adaptation. The differences are going to be, of course, like Elektra. I hated Elektra in that series. I don't think they did her justice. I don't think they really did as good a job as they could have with that character, especially when you take in consideration what we did in that '03 series, and then everything that we hadn't done in any adaptation of that character. So, because remember, Elektra is in 3 adaptations. There's '03 film, there's her film, which I think was '05 or '06, and then of course the 15 Netflix series. So Elektra has appeared in 3 adaptations, right? But there is so much stuff from the comics that had never reached those adaptations. And I'm like, dude, y'all, anyway, I'm not going to get into an Elektra rant on. Don't. At the end of the day, like I said, Daredevil was always one of my favorites. Always one of my faves. And like I said, it took me a while when I was trying to put him on, like who to put for that 5th spot on the list. But then all I had to do was just reach into my pocket. You know what I mean? All I had to do is just look on my kitchen wall, and I got this Daredevil print framed, up on my kitchen wall. And I'm like, dude, come on, man, you got to go with the Devil's of Hell kitchen. You know what it is. So that's why Daredevil's number 5 on my list. For him specifically, mostly because of his concept and his conceit as a character. I fell in love. All right. So coming next up, number 4 on my list is you guys might have been able to figure this one out. The web slinger himself, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Yeah, Spider-Man. So with Spider-Man, I'm going to say that the main reason why he's on my list is probably affinity. My affinity for the character, just because Spider-Man was one of the first Marvel characters I was ever introduced to, like I said, Spider-Man the animated series. Spider-Man the animated series, the Saturday morning Fox animated series. That was pretty much my introduction into Marvel Comics. So many characters that I end up falling in love with, I was introduced to first in that series. A lot of them. Like I said, I just mentioned it with Daredevil. The same thing goes for the Punisher. Same thing goes with Blade. I'm trying to think of another one who was in that series first. Well, I'm thinking heroes, because if we're talking villains, like Kingpin, of course, Spider-Man's entire Rogues Gallery, Venom, of course, Venom and Carnage. Hell, man, if memory serves, I think, Spider-Man that was my introduction to a lot of the storylines too, because I remember the animated series did a loose adaptation on Secret Wars. I remember that too. So, but yeah, I was always a fan of Spider-Man, but more specifically, I really, really became a fan of Spider-Man I'm just going to say the early 2000s. I'm not even going to say the late 90s. It's more so the early 2000s. Because in the late 90s, the Spider-Man craze had kind of started to kind of simmer down, right? Because like in the early 90s, Spider-Man was really hot because you had McFarlane working on the early 90s, the animated series. But then by the late 90s, all you had was Spider-Man Unlimited, right? And that's because I remember the whole thing about when Spider-Man animated series ended, and then they were talking about, the rights and all that. I mean, I don't know time, but that's the story behind why, like, towards the late 90s were kind of like in limbo because licensing agreements, right? But in the early 2000s, two things happened. Two things happened in the early 2000s. Number one, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man film. So Spider-Man 1, the first live-action Spider-Man, that happened. But then around the same time was when Ultimate Spider-Man started in comics. And I started, like, I wasn't reading its entire, like, that first initial its run, but I remember seeing like the covers for it and seeing like the images, because I had an Ultimate Spider-Man poster, right? And I want to say that was like 02, 03, because it was right around the time I was getting out of Ultimate X-Men. And then Ultimate Spider-Man started up, and I was like, oh, okay. So I was reading some of that at the time too. And yeah, I mean, by the time we get to by 2000, what is it? Yeah, by 04, I believe, we have Spider-Man 2, and by then I'm a full-blown just Spider-Man fanatic. Like, I just love the character, right? Um anything, everything Spider-Man I had to get my hands on. Right? I remember I had the Spider-Man PS1 game, which had the second one. I had mentioned Electro, right? And I played the hell out of that game. I remember the Spider-Man 2, the film game for PS2. Oh my god, that was my game for the longest. I absolutely love that game. For the MTV Man animated series, which a lot of people don't know, I remember being a fan of. Wasn't a great animated series, but it was fine for what it is. But yeah, I've always liked Spider-Man. To me, he is the equivalent, not in terms of like characterization or character philosophy, ideology, not necessarily that, but I'm talking about in terms of being a pretty being the cornerstone of the Marvel Comics universe. Spider-Man is Marvel's Superman. Like, he's their big flagship character. And that's kind of, he's kind of always had that um status for me, you know. So, but yeah, that's why he's number 4 on my list. All right, water break. Okay, let's move on to number 3. Number 3, I feel like you guys are going to get. I think you guys are going to get number 3. So number 3 on my list is none other than the Captain himself. Yep. Number 3 on my list is Captain America, Steve Rogers, Captain America, the original Captain America. Yeah. So Captain America for me. So funny story with Captain America. I remember like seeing the character, when I was younger, because once again, Spider-Man the animated series. I remember the whole because that was what? Because wasn't that the I think it was Captain America Baron Zemo sort of storyline, right? Like I remember that. I remember that. And then like I remember seeing that old live action Captain America film early 90s. Like I saw that on television when I was a kid, right? I remember seeing that, and then there was that 90s Avengers series where I think Captain America had like a cameo or something in one of the episodes. Like I remember that. Funny enough thing with me and Captain America, I did not get a formal introduction to Captain America until X-Men Evolution, because I remember they did an episode totally dedicated to like Captain America. And first off, really good episode, really, really cool episode. The whole story about the sort of the super soldier, the rejuvenation chambers, and like them finding Cap, in stasis in his chamber, and Magneto wanting to use the chamber to rejuvenate himself and all that type of stuff. And throughout the whole episode, you have Wolverine pretty much reminiscing, telling these war stories about when he fought alongside Captain America during World War II, right? Like I just thought that was the coolest thing at the time, right? And yeah, like that episode had so much reverence for that character that I was like, okay, I got to get down on this character. So then what ended up happening was, I remember right around the time I was finishing high school, going into college, right? Like that's when I started getting a hold of some of the comics, right? And funny enough, the Ed Brubaker run was where I started, because those were the comics like in the early to mid 2000s, like the post 9/11 comics. Like that was a lot of Ed Brubaker. And I remember checking out some of those, and I was like, all right, I kind of like these, especially since at that point in time in the comics, granted, we have been doing this with Cap, I think as far back, if not, I know definitely the 90s, but maybe even the 80s was when we started doing like the more morally ambiguous stories, because that's where like Nomad and like US Agent and all that, like all of those come from like that time period where we started, doing more like edgy Captain America, right? So I didn't get into those until like I was in college. Right? But no, I started off like, Ed Brubaker, right? And that's where like Winter Soldier and stuff came from, right? So, but when around the time I was graduating high school, I think it was my senior year in high school, was when Civil War happened. And of course, the big thing, spoilers, the big thing about Civil War was that Cap gets assassinated in Civil War. And I just remember that like being like a whoa moment, right? So when And one more thing I got to throw in there too, because around the same time as that was happening was when the Ultimates were getting adapted in the direct video animated film Ultimate Avengers Part 1 and 2. And so I remember those came out around the same time too. So that's when I started like really getting into the character of Captain America. And of course, once I got into college, that's when I went back and started reading like older, like classic Captain America stuff. But Cap was all like as soon as I was introduced to the character, I automatically fell in love with him, especially since Cap is a good example. And I've heard this argument made several times by other content creators on YouTube and whatnot, by other comic book creators, other writers, other artists, things like that. Because remember what I said previously about Spider-Man sort of being that flagship character from Marvel in the same way that Superman is for DC, right? But I said it didn't necessarily have to do with like that character's like philosophy or ideology or his characterization. Captain America is the closest thing in the Marvel universe, in the main 616 universe. Let me preface that, in the main 616 universe. I've always considered him the closest thing in terms of like ideology to Superman, right? But Captain America has always been a good example of how you can do dark, gritty, realistic stories, morally ambiguous stories with this character, and have this character be morally ambiguous in the sense of the actions and some of the choices he makes, right? But so long as it's still centered on that core that core ideology, so long as he's still the same character at his core, you can model more like morally ambiguous things with that character. And this is something that DC has been struggling with Superman for the longest time. How do you make a contemporary modern day Superman story and still have him be Superman? Marvel figured it out. One of the best examples, and I've said this ever since that movie came out, Winter Soldier, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, is one of the best examples that I've seen in terms of seeing concepts. We're taking concepts from comics, we're adapting it to a new medium, making it readily available and easily accessible to the masses. And we have managed to do that in less than 2 hours and 30 minutes. We managed to give you contemporary, more dark, a little more morally ambiguous sort of story with Captain America, but Captain America in it, him in it of himself, does not have to be dark, gritty, brown, or ambiguous necessarily. But you can put him in that world and still have him be that character and still Captain America and right? And so yeah, like the fact that that character has that utility, we're able to use it because one poorly. The whole Hell Hydra cap, the whole cap, that was us doing that. That was doing that the wrong way. We've done it the right way before in the past, right? That character has that. It's been before. But like I said, Cap, wrapping up my whole Cap discussion, I've always said this. Cap is pretty much what I always thought when we want to talk about like American like national pride and that whole like American like all the symbolism that what America is supposed to represent, what we're taught as kids that America is supposed to be, but then we grow up as adults and found out that it was total and other not bullshit. You know, we finally get that real education of what this country actually is. Cap is the representative of what it's supposed to be, you know. And I'm gonna close this discussion with a good, like a really good example of what I'm talking about. If you guys will remember Age of Ultron, when there's the scene when Shield shows up at the end with the big helicarrier, right? The one that they were able to salvage. And Quicksilver is like, "Oh, this is Shield," and Cap tells him this is what Shield is supposed to be. Like that sentiment is how I always thought Cap was when it came to like America and the U.S. military and everything that Cap represents. He represents the supposed to be. He represents that ideal to aspire to. So that's why he's number 3 on my list. All right. You guys should get number 2. And the reason why I'm gonna say you guys should get number 2 is because I've done an entire video dedicated to this character. So that's why I think you guys should get number 2. But yeah, let's go ahead and let's just get on right with it. Number 2 on my list for top 5 favorite Marvel characters is the master of magnetism himself, Magneto. Yeah, number 2 on my list. The first villain on my list too. And it's kind of funny because I bet you guys weren't expecting a villain on this list. I bet you guys were expecting all heroes. No, I'll throw some villains on there. And yeah, and for me, Magneto's chief Marvel villain. He's my favorite Marvel. Okay, so real quick, why did Magneto make the list, but why is he number 2? Why? It's so high up. So here's the reason why. Number 1, not only is Magneto my favorite Marvel villain, Magneto is my favorite comic book villain, period, of all time, like Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, Antarctic, whatever, any indie you could think of, because I'm not counting characters like I'm not counting characters like the Man in Black. Randall Flagg and whatnot, because technically Dark Tower, I believe, was a book before it was a comic, so I'm not counting him, that whole thing. But like, no, dude, Magneto's been my man. Magneto's been my man from Jump Street. And the main reason for it is because Magneto is he's one of the few comic book villains I actually agree with. Yes, I understand that he is a genocidal maniac. Yes, I understand that he wants to wipe out all of humanity. And if X-Men existed in the real world, that would include me. Yes, I understand those things. But that being said, I find a very hard time disagreeing with Magneto. Do I think he's extreme? Yes, I do. But sometimes extremism is warranted. It's warranted, and I would argue, depending on the circumstance, it is necessary. So, yes, I understand the oxymoron in that. It's like, Larry, if he wants to wipe out all humans, you would be wiped out too. Yep. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Yeah. You want to know why? Natural selection, ladies and gentlemen. The children of the atom, they are the next, or they're supposed to be the next step in human evolution, right? What are they? Homo superior? They're not Homo sapien, they're Homo superior. Well, guess what? That's just the luck of the draw. That's natural selection. Y'all don't say that when y'all scarfing down a burger, do you? You don't talk about natural selection when you're having a Big Mac, do you? When you're having a steak dinner? When you're having some, hot dogs or pork chops or, a grilled cheese sandwich, you don't have. Okay, no, listen, grilled chicken sandwich, you don't say that, do you? But no, but in all seriousness, Magneto, I always dug him. I dug him from jump, from his backstory. Always thought he was a compelling character. Always thought that his philosophy was, like I said, extremist as it is, like his philosophy is still very. It always intrigued me, right? It always intrigued me. How, how he views and then inevitably treats other mutants, I always thought was interesting, because on the one hand, to him, mutants are all his brothers and sisters, but on the other hand, if they stand in his way, he has no problem taking them out, and how he rationalized that, I always thought was interesting. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else I could really say about the character that I haven't, because I have a whole video dedicated to talking about Magneto. Just check out my favorite. It's called Favorite Villains Magneto. Check that out. Yeah, I've always loved Magneto. Because like I said, give me a villain I've always said this. Because I've always said this was the best thing about villains. Give me a villain with a point, and give me one with a point that I can at least see their side of that argument. And then if I agree with that side of the argument, well then I'm sold. I'm sold. And Magneto's one of those villains. He's probably the only comic villain. Probably the only one. That I have that sort of affinity with, you know. Yeah. Yes, Deuce. 1042. Magneto is an extremist because he's a genocidal maniac. He wants to commit genocide against the Homo sapien species. That's pretty damn extreme. Not always, but more often than not, he wants to wipe out all the humans. That's pretty extreme. That's pretty extreme. All right, so real quick, guys, because I am starting to run out of time. So, like I said, if you guys want to get any comments or questions in before the end of the night broadcast, drop the super chat. I'll make sure to get to them. I am starting to run out of time. Okay, honorable mention time. There's a lot of them, so I'm just going to start throwing them out there. And yeah, now we've reached bullet time, right? So I'm just going to throw out my honorable mentions because I don't have enough time to really get into all of them. All right, so honorable mentions. Off top, if I was doing a top 10, number 6 would be Black Panther. Yeah, I know. Especially in events and whatnot. No, I do. Don't get me wrong, guys. I love Black Panther. Love Black Panther. Like I said, if this was a top 10, he would be number 6. Love Black Panther. But like I said, the other things to take in consideration. How familiar am I with the character? Because I'm not the biggest Black Panther fan. Like I couldn't sit here and just spill a whole bunch of Black Panther knowledge on you guys. I couldn't, because I'm not that familiar with the character to that degree. Not like I am with some of the others on this list. You know what I'm saying? But he's a character I've always liked. He's a character I always thought was intriguing, and I've talked about the character before. I'll be here all day if I had to break it down for you guys. But like, amount of knowledge and how much time I've spent with that character, because I really didn't become a fan of Black Panther until high school. And funny enough, I mentioned the Ultimate Avengers animated film earlier. The sequel, which is Rise of the Black Panther, that was the thing that was like my introduction to his character, and that's what kind of made me like fall in love with him. Yeah. But I'll throw this out there. My favorite depictions of the character. Number one, of course, the MCU, Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther, the MCU. One, but number 2 is Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I love Black Panther in that series. He is hilarious in that. I love him in that series. All right, I mentions Gambit, She-Hulk, Switch, Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers. So not the new Miss Marvel we have, which is Miss Khan. I forget her first name. Not her. And not Captain Marvel now. I'm told Carol Danvers, she was Miss Marvel before the new reboot that dubbed her Captain Marvel. I'm talking about the Chris Claremont Miss Marvel. That version I love. I love that version. I can't stand the new version, but the old OG Miss Marvel, yes. Other honorable mentions. Let's see. Who did I forget? Doc Strange. Doc Strange is one. In terms of favorites that I didn't, that might be it, because I was going through the list pretty fast, but I think I covered all of my favorites. Well, Miles is a new favorite. I will say that Miles is a new favorite. Blade, of course. Okay, so now I got to throw in the brothers, right? Blade, Luke Cage, Iron Fist. They're on there. I'm trying to think if I see me and Lucille. Dr. Voodoo, I am actually not that familiar with. I know this much about that character. So it wouldn't be fair for me to consider him a favorite I haven't spent enough time with that character. I'm just trying to think if there's anyone else I forgot. Um no, oh well, okay, because I'm forgetting some villains. The Mandarin. The Mandarin's one of my favorite villains. Yep, Doc Doom is one of my favorites too. Yep, I forgot about Doc Doom. I forgot about Doc Doom. Um, so real quick, I'm gonna throw Namor in there because I like Namor when he is an antagonist, not necessarily a villain, but an antagonist, right? Um, so yeah, just throwing that out there. All right, so yeah, uh, that's pretty much gonna wrap up the honorable mentions, guys, because I got to get out of here, right? So that's gonna wrap up the honorable mentions. Um, you guys should be able to figure out what my name is. I'm pretty sure you all will, but I'll give you a hint real quick. There is another video, just like this man's video, totally completely dedicated to this character. And I'm gonna give you guys like 10 seconds. 10 seconds, real fast. Go. Drop it in the chat. Did anyone get it? Does anyone have it? No one. Deshaun got it. He got it. My man, he got it. I knew Deshaun was gonna get it. I knew Deshaun was gonna get it. All right, now everyone else is just piling in, but Deshaun got it. Deshaun got it. Yeah, yeah. Number one on my list. My number one all time favorite Marvel character is Wolverine. Yep, always. And here's the thing about that. Remember all the qualifications I mentioned earlier in the video, right? So personal preference, amount of knowledge, how much I know about the character, my affinity for the character, like how much I like that character, right? And like how much that character, is an I'm not going to say an inspiration, but like how much of an impression that character left on me, right? Um, did I mention like how long I've been with that character and all that type of stuff, right? Dude, I've been a fan of Wolverine since I was a little boy. Since I was a wee little boy, right? Um and from the very first time I saw him, from the very first, snick, I mean, yeah, my introduction from of Wolverine with a lot of cats my age, of course, was X-Men the animated series, right? But I mean, dude, pretty much every dude there. I'm trying to think if there is a single property that Wolverine is in that I did not at least tolerate just because he was in it. The only thing I could probably think of might be X-Men Apocalypse, because he has his cameo in X-Men Apocalypse, and I can't stand that movie, right? I can't stand that movie. But yeah. But I mean, dude, like every animated series Wolverine appeared in, I dug, right? Every animated series, even the animes, right? Like the Wolverine anime, which I know is hit and miss for a lot of people. I dug that. The X-Men anime, which more people actually like, I dug them in that. I dug, you know, pretty much Hugh Jackman's entire tenure as a character. I dug, right? Yeah, X-Men Origins Wolverine for him and Liev Schreiber and Sabretooth. I will watch that. I have watched that film multiple times just for those two. Just for those two, right? Yeah, the rest of the film trash, but just for those two, I've watched that film several times. The Wolverine, I've watched it several times, and someone mentioned dude Logan. Logan is one of my favorite. Logan is one of my favorite movies. Period. But it's definitely one of my favorite superhero films, and it's probably my favorite performance as Wolverine. It probably is my favorite one. Yeah. Um. It, if nothing else, just because of the story, because of the story with him and X-23. Yeah, it's probably that one. But I mean, dude, like I loved Wolverine in X-Men Evolution. Loved him in that because, as I mentioned earlier, most of my favorite episodes include him. And of course, I like how they did his character, his relationship with some of the other characters, because I've always been a fan of Wolverine having like this surrogate father relationship with some of the young female X-Men members. So and depending on what you're watching, it's a different character, right? So predominantly in comics, it's Kitty Pryde that he has like that surrogate father-daughter relationship with, right? In the X-Men the animated series, it's Jubilee. In X-Men Evolution, it's I'm gonna say it's more Rogue. It's more Rogue than it is Kitty Pryde, but it's actually both of them in that series. But I'm gonna say it's more Rogue just because um he plays a major role in Rogue's storyline later in that series. Like he's pretty much the only one she can trust, right? Because they're sort of like the two outsiders, right? And then of course in the at least the first trilogy in the Fox film, in the Fox live action films, it was Rogue, which is one of the reasons why it was like that in X-Men Evolution. But in Wolverine and the X-Men, which is an animated series no one seems to talk about enough, it was definitely Rogue because they had sort of like a they had an estranged, sort of disgruntled father-daughter relationship in that series. Um, yeah, and then of course Stephen Bloom is probably my favorite American voice actor, or at least English voice actor, and his whole tenure as Wolverine is fantastic. Um, Wolverine was my favorite character to play in Ultimate Alliance, Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Um, the X2 video game was one of my favorite video games. What can I say about the man? Wolverine. I've always he's why I'm a Michigan Wolverine fan. Yep, yep, that is a true story. That's a true story. When I discovered the University of Michigan football team and I saw that they were called the Wolverines and they had the same blue and gold color scheme, I was like, oh, I'm all about this team. Yep. True statement. True statement. Yeah. I've loved Wolverine. I've always loved Wolverine as a character. Always loved his stories, always loved his adaptations, all that jazz. All right, guys. So, and I am over time. I'm gonna be late. But yeah, guys, so that pretty much wraps up my top five real quick because I see a lot of people came in on the back end. Let me go ahead and catch y'all up. We're gonna do this again. Bullet time. Are you ready for it? Let's go ahead and let's do the damn thing. So when that's a thunderclap. Dang, man. Oh, man. All right, so let's review the list one more time. Number on my list was Daredevil. Number 4 on my list was Spider-Man. Number 3 on my list was Captain America. Number 2 on my list was Magneto. And finally, number 1 on my list was Wolverine, aka Logan, aka Mr. James Howlett. And wrong banner. Yep. So that pretty much wraps up my top 5 favorite Marvel characters. I want to go ahead and take this opportunity to thank everybody for watching live, thanking everybody for watching after the fact. As always, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Follow me on social media, facebook.com/OAW, twitter.com/OAWENTMT, twitch.tv/OAW_entertainment. Of course, right here on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/OAW entertainment. And last, but certainly not least, if you all have any requests for a top 5 list of your own, they don't necessarily have to be top 5 favorite. They can be top 5 best, or, well, I mean, the best are the hardest. I have no one had. Can you guys picture this? Picture this, right? I've been doing top 5 for years now. I think I've probably done over 20 to 25 top 5s, right? No one has ever requested a top 5 worst list or a top 5 most hated anything. That's kind of crazy, right? I mean, it's good. I like to stay positive here on the channel. We like to be positive here on OAW, but that's just kind of tripped me out. Like, wow, I've never gotten a top top 5 worst or top 5 most hated or disliked or anything like that. Nothing negative. So I guess that's kind of cool. But if you or I mean top 5 like most memorable or top 5, I mean just dude, top 5 anything. Anything. If you guys have an idea for a top 5, you got a request you want to see done right here on the channel, become a patron at patreon.com/OAW. Select that top 5 tier. It's just $15. And in addition to your request, not only do you get the request, you also get access to all Patreon exclusive content. You get access to the OAW Vault, and you get an invite to join in on the live monthly Q&A right here on the OAW YouTube channel, the Facebook page, and now the OAW Twitch as well. So once again, patreon.com/OAW and select that top 5 tier. All right, guys, time for me to get out of here. It might be a little too early to make this announcement. Well, no, because I pre-ordered it. So I pre-ordered. Since we're talking about Marvel, I did pre-order Marvel's Avengers. I'm playing on Xbox. Don't shoot the messenger, you know. But yeah, I did pre-order it. I know it drops tomorrow. I am actually going to pick that up tomorrow morning. That along with my copy of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remake. And I will probably be twitching all damn weekend, like not 24 hours or 48 hours, no crazy enough, like because I work 2 jobs, so I got to go to work on the weekend. But I'm talking about like in the afternoons, in the evenings. Probably gonna be doing Twitch all weekend long. I am going to update you guys on the Facebook page, on the Twitter page, on the YouTube whenever I get going. But if you want to make sure you don't miss a thing, you gotta follow me on Twitch, and you gotta make sure you select for notifications so that you guys get you get the ping in your email or on your phone. I suggest getting it. So here's what's cool. If you do the notifications, you'll get the email, and and if you have your email on your phone, it will pop up on your phone if you have the notifications enabled. What I would do is I would actually download the Twitch app so that you get the notification straight from the app, right? As soon as I go on, right? That's what I would recommend. But anyway, so yeah, that's going to be this weekend. As far as how long it's going to take me to get those Let's Plays over to the YouTube channel, I don't know yet. I'm still trying to figure out a schedule how I want to do that. But yeah, that's pretty much what the tentative plan is. So keep an eye out for that. All right, guys, time for me to get out of here. So with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief. I want to thank you all for joining me again tonight. I am signing off, and until next time, peace.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?